Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, preventing another deadly hepatitis A outbreak in San Diego.
It's always positive to have an opportunity to come together, have open dialogue, and allow for constructive discussion.
How county health officials plan to prevent the disease from spreading countywide again. Plus, now that President Trump's Remain in Mexico policy is in effect, how many migrants are we sending back? The number could change if the policy expands. Former First Daughter Chelsea Clinton is in San Diego, bringing awareness to the experiences of foster children. Her message to the public. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Ebony Monet. County leaders are joining forces to address the 2017 hepatitis A outbreak and to prevent it from happening again. KPBS editor Tom Fudge explains how the county is using this experience to prevent this from happening in the future.
It's always positive to have an opportunity to come together, have open dialogue, and allow for constructive discussion.
Public health leaders are taking a closer look at the outbreak that sickened hundreds and killed at least 20 people in San Diego. At today's public conference, health officials said the goal to prevent another deadly outbreak is to make Hep A vaccinations more available to the public and also monitor vulnerable populations like drug users and people living on the streets.
We make it part of our cultural norm that when people come into a emergency department, when they come into contact with a homeless service provider or a substance use treatment facility, that they are routinely offered the vaccine by people and organizations that they trust and are seeking other services for. Make it one-stop shopping so that it's not an extra thing, but it's part of the suite of services they're already getting.
In 2017, the Hep A outbreak was so abundant, the county started power washing streets and installing portable hand washing stations. These extra measures not only help combat the disease from spreading, but it's something San Diego wants to implement in the future.
As long as we have individuals who are living in unsanitary scenarios, that they, one, get vaccinated if they can against diseases that may pop up in those, but then also to take extra precautions like offer them hygiene and access to hygiene and sanitation and clean the streets effectively with the chemicals that can kill the germs that they may be exposed to in those unsanitary environments.
The county is using the incident as a learning experience.
We can only move forward if we look back and learn from our past. And I think, it's easy to look at this from the outsider looking back and say, oh, we should have done X, Y, and Z differently. And yes, if this happened today, of course we would do things a little slightly differently with everyone and the knowledge that we've all gained with this unique situation that we had to deal with. And so now we learned that if this was to happen tomorrow, we of course would be acting differently and a little slightly differently, and we're trying to make sure we institutionalize and make processes and procedures and keep up the relationships so that we can continue to work with our partners so that we prevent these types of things from happening and address them rapidly when they do.
The county is currently working on a plan to receive state funding or reimbursement for public health issues that may arise in the future. A top Mexican official says the U.S. plan to return some asylum seekers to Mexico while they await their day in court may involve families after all. But as KPBS border reporter Jean Guerrero reports, it might also expand to other ports of entry beyond San Ysidro.
Mexico's Consul General in San Diego, Marcela Celorio, says the U.S. pilot program has started out slower than expected. Only about 5 to 10 people a day have been returned to Mexico after an initial U.S. asylum screening. She says if the U.S. decides to start returning families in addition to single adults, Mexico will receive them. She says officials want to have a consistent humanitarian policy toward migrants, of welcoming them with open arms.
We opened the south for migrants, so how come we're not going to open our border to the Central Americans that are coming from the north?
A Homeland Security official told reporters earlier this week that the U.S. could return asylum seekers to Mexico, even without Mexico's cooperation. But Celorio says that isn't true if the U.S. wants to return people legally through the ports of entry, where Mexican authorities are stationed. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
For 4.5 years, San Diego's Bicycle Advisory Board has been working to make the city more bike-friendly. But the City Council decided to dissolve it and create a new Mobility Advisory Board in its place. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen explains what the new board hopes to accomplish.
The Bike Advisory Board was formed in 2014. What do you think are the board's greatest accomplishments?
Well, I'm really proud of the work that this dedicated group of volunteers and citizens have put forward, and the accomplishments that they've made as a group working with the city to make safety and awareness and policy improvements to make biking a more viable choice for people here in the city, and to look at sort of our when we started, the Bike Master Plan had just been recently updated, so we had the task of creating the strategic implementation plan for that plan, which really was a roadmap for the city from this point forward, to carry forward those priorities and policies and programs to make biking even better moving forward. And that effort took about 2 years of really hard work for this group, so I'm really proud of that. Our input on the downtown mobility plan and the infrastructure that's now finally coming to be a part of that, we provided a lot of input on that and a lot of support for it. The climate action plan and really helping look at what it takes to reach those mode share goals. So, and then I think the evolution of dockless and docked and mobility choices has brought us to where we are now. So I think we're proud of all those things.
So on the downtown mobility plan, you had been working on that for years, giving input to staff on the really nitty-gritty details of how these protected bike lanes should be designed. And then last year you found out that the complete network downtown was not actually going to be finished by this summer like the mayor had originally promised. What was that like?
I mean, I think as we've seen in the whole time that we've been together, things have taken a lot longer than what we've expected in making changes that we need to make, and that includes the downtown mobility plan. So it was disappointing. We've been a very patient group, and the city wants to get it right. So I think it takes a lot of effort to sort of plan the routing, to look at how it's best to be routed and how best to be implemented. And I think we're now starting to be at a tipping point where we can just finally getting these things going to build out that complete network within the next year and a half.
This new mobility advisory board that the city has created hasn't been formed yet. There are a lot of different directions that it could go. What is your best case scenario and what is your worst case scenario?
Well, first of all, I think when we talk about mobility, it has to be about prioritizing non-single occupant car mobility. This is where that has to go for the climate action plan. It's where it has to go for growth. And so best case scenario is that it's mostly represented by people working with biking, walking, and transit. The worst case scenario is it's not an engaged board. It's not it's not the Bike Advisory Board has been so effective in communicating with the city and providing input and actually having some influence and some say on how we move forward on implementing bikeways. And so I think a worst case scenario would be a board that doesn't take their priorities as serious as we have. But I think they will, and I think it's going to be balanced, and I would hope that it's a balanced board of modes that we want to represent in the future of San Diego.
What do you think needs to change in order to make San Diego a really world-class bicycling city?
I think we're making those changes, but we have to implement those changes, right? Like we've approved plans, we've funded plans. We need to get serious about getting rid of roadblocks that are stopping implementation of these plans. There's too many delays. The processes of actually putting down the protected bikeways is taking too long. And I really think we can be a world-class city once we put these networks in. And networks is the key word. You have to have connected, protected networks to get people to ride. And so if we can just get them in, it's a 9-mile network downtown that's going to connect to the Sandag regional bikeways, and the landscape could change dramatically in the next 2 to 3 years if we really put our effort towards getting it done.
California lawmakers presented two competing bills this week on how police can use deadly force. The current law states a law enforcement shooting is justified if it's deemed reasonable. Both authors agree that a new statewide policy must be adopted where police can only use deadly force when it's necessary. The difference between the bills is that one is endorsed by law enforcement and the other is not. Lawmakers who are proceeding without police support say they're doing so because law enforcement refuses to address the role of racial bias in previous deadly shootings.
So let's have a fair, objective, unbiased conversation about the disproportionate rates at which people of color are being murdered at their hands. Step up to the plate, law enforcement, and let's have a dialogue about what's just and right in our society.
In 2017, police officers in California killed 172 people. Both bills will require a law enforcement officer in the state to undergo de-escalation training and pursue non-lethal tactics whenever possible. The devastating Camp Fire of 2018 left 32,000 children displaced from their classrooms for weeks. Now, California lawmakers are looking to ways to better prepare public schools for future disasters. Educators from multiple counties impacted by recent wildfires say nothing could have prepared them for the disasters. Still, local officials say more mental health support is needed for students and staff who are struggling with trauma. State leaders say it's still a learning process.
Sadly, we've seen some 18 school districts that have been impacted in recent times by emergencies. And so we know now that we've got to focus on things like rebuilding schools and how do we support students that lose their home, how do we work through tragedy, how do we prepare, how do we respond, and then how do we move forward after there's been a disaster.
During the Camp Fire last year, the Department of Education issued waivers for a class size requirement and residency limits following the fire in order to accommodate those displaced students.
I'm Amna Navaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, a moment of reckoning in Virginia. A look at the limits of forgiveness in public life. That's coming up at 7 right after Evening Edition on KPBS.
Former first daughter Hillary Clinton comes to San Diego. Today she met with young people to discuss their personal experiences with foster care and the juvenile justice system.
It's already a confusing place for a child to be in the system, but it's even more confusing when you can't open up to someone.
At this training session, participants, including Emilio Davis, are encouraged to share their goals.
Bringing more awareness to what it's like to experience the foster care system, since I have, as well as you.
Davis says by the age of 10, he had been in the San Diego County foster care system 3 times. He's here at just in time for foster youth with mentors and other young people to gain skills to help transition out of the system.
Then next with the master's, I want to actually go into the social work system and make those changes.
Also in the room is Chelsea Clinton. The former first daughter who spent her childhood in the spotlight now listens to teens describe their childhoods in foster care. Clinton's visit is part of a more extensive review and discussion on child welfare and juvenile justice. The Clinton Foundation has partnered with the San Diego Foundation.
We're not meant to be placed in systems, we're meant to be a part of a community.
The next stop was Project Aware in Lemon Grove. There, Clinton continued to listen to more young people share their experiences.
The police came in and uprooted everything in her house, searching for drugs. She didn't even speak English.
The goal is to go from active listening to cultivating real solutions.
I'm incredibly humbled and inspired by the young people who have been or still are in the foster care system or on probation in the juvenile justice system, and their determination to have a more trauma-informed, compassionate approach. Not only for themselves, but for other kids.
It's very humbling. I'm honored to even be meeting her today. I'm so proud that our voices are finally being heard.
This partnership includes more than 100 community organizations. Today, the young people from Project Aware introduced a trauma-informed code of conduct based on their personal experiences. The idea is to help other organizations better support youth. It's the first day of the 29th annual Jewish Film Festival. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando is there now live at Claremont Reading Cinemas. Hi there, Beth.
Hi, this is opening night for the San Diego International Jewish Film Festival, and I am here with Brian Garrick, who is the Director of Cultural Arts here. So, Brian, this year you guys have added international to the title of your festival. You've always had an international flavor, so what's the addition of that for?
Thank you, Beth. That's right, we added international this year, and part of the reason is so it can more accurately reflect the diversity of Jewish films, Jewish experience. We have films from throughout the world. This year we have films from 18 different countries. And as you know, wherever Jews are in the world, there's a Jewish story and a Jewish film to be made. So thus the international.
But the festival hasn't changed its mission in any way, so you use the film festival to kind of have this cultural exchange.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, to showcase the variety of Jewish experience, Jewish history, Jewish art from throughout the world. That core mission remains.
And one of the films that's a highlight this year is your centerpiece film, so explain what that's about.
The centerpiece is the film in the middle of the festival, and it's a fantastic film by acclaimed director Roberta Grossman called Who Will Write Our History. And the film is about a very unique and little told story about a group called Oneg Shabbos, which in the Warsaw Ghetto during the Holocaust saw what was happening around them in the ghetto. And Emanuel Ringelblum, who was a historian who was living in the ghetto, together with this group called Oneg Shabbos, buried 3 cans of material that were essentially time capsules documenting what was going on and the horrors around them. 2 were found after the war, and 1 has never been found. So literally, this archive, the Ringelblum archive, which is known as now, is the story that's being told in this amazing film. Literally a story of history lost and found, buried, and then retrieved.
One of the great things about the San Diego International Jewish Film Festival is they give a context for their films. And for tonight's film, called It Must Be Schwing, the Blue Note story, we have Mark Cantor, who is a jazz archivist. Now, Mark, this is subtitled The Blue Note Story, but is that all we get in this movie?
Well, actually, only in part. The Blue Note jazz label was one of the most influential from the 1940s on. But this is also the story of 2 very dear friends who emigrated to New York City from Germany right before the Holocaust. It's a story of their friendship, but also their shared passion for American jazz and how they parlayed this passion into the preservation of the music through recordings.
And what about this documentary do you like?
Oh, I think I like the fact that it balances the history of the label with lots of examples of the music, but personalizes it by showing how the relationship between these 2 men really made their passion and their dream a reality with the label.
And you're going to be hanging around after the film to also do a Q&A?
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, so this is the beginning of the San Diego International Jewish Film Festival. It is going to be taking place at multiple venues through February 17th. So come down and check out shorts, documentaries, and feature films.
Thanks, Beth. It's clear skies in San Diego at the moment, but another storm is on the way. Let's go now to meteorologist Dajia Swad for a full forecast.
We had a chilly start this morning across San Diego County. As we talk about precipitation, not a whole bunch of that for tonight. You do notice to our north on our satellite radar from the past several hours, lots of clouds moving in towards northern and even trying to make its way into central California. That's because we'll be tracking out a low pressure system to the north That will continue to drop its way into the state of California, and eventually some of that moisture going to make its way into Southern California. We'll have some of that in just a second. But for tonight, it's clear, chilly with a low of 43 as we take you into Borrego Springs, dropping down to 34 tonight, 25 in Mount Laguna, and 34 in Oceanside. Once again, dry conditions, but we definitely need the jackets on. As we continue into tomorrow morning, still going to be on the cooler side, back towards our east there, on milder air moving on in for Phoenix, Albuquerque, Vegas, as well as Grand Junction. For us, once again, you kick off the morning, still a bit on the chilly side. We will be watching a low pressure bring in moisture, even some snow out to the higher elevations. By the time that moisture makes its way to Southern California, going to be on the spotty side here in San Diego. And in fact, you start the day off dry. Not going to see that moisture until late tomorrow. 61 in Oceanside, 65 in Borrego Springs, and 45 in Mount Laguna for your high on Friday, topping off at 63. In San Diego. We continue into the weekend and will be remaining pretty dry for the most part. This moisture that we see in towards Washington, as well as into Oregon, down into Northern and Central California, only a tad bit of that makes it into our area. So for tomorrow, high of 61, lots of sunshine at the coast, 59 on Saturday with some showers in places, and then we'll be looking at some showers mainly late on your Sunday. The best chance for that really going to be at the coast. But we'll also see some of that try to march its way inland, some afternoon showers, the high of 61 on Sunday. Also going to be feeling a cool down behind this wet weather Monday. And then as we head into the mountains, we'll be looking at the chance for some stray activity for the start of the weekend and even into the end of the weekend into your Sunday afternoon, and also getting a bit of a chilly push of air for your Monday with a high of 39. Deserts, got to keep an eye to the sky for that shower activity for the start and end of the weekend, topping off in the 60s. Reporting for KPBS News, I'm your meteorologist, Dajia Swad. Back to you.
Also, a follow-up to a story we aired last night about Congressman Scott Peters. The graphic identified him as a Republican, but he's actually a Democrat. Well, great white shark bites are a leading cause of death for California's sea otter. Now there's a big movement to care for injured otters and make sure they're safely returned to the wild. Here's more on the Recovery and Release program at the Marine Mammal Center.
The sea otters are a threatened species, so we have taken it on as our mission at the aquarium to help the species to survive. So we have a lot of otters that get stranded on the beaches. They come into the aquarium and we raise the pups with surrogate moms, and we raise them for release.
So today we're very proud to release these two sea otters. They rehabilitated together. They finally achieved a very healthy weight. And then last month in December we were able to put transmitters surgically into their abdomen so that we could track them. So one of the otters that's being released today was named Langley, and she stranded last year with her mother, and her mother had been attacked by a shark.
When they were found, the pup was hanging on to the mother, and the mother was not doing very well and eventually died.
So Langley ended up being in our care for almost 7 months. We had to encourage her to eat different kinds of food products and learning how to take care of her own coat, all those things that a young otter will need to have the skills to have in order to survive.
The second one, Sprout, was one that we found here at Del Monte Beach, and that pup was on the beach by itself. So we don't know what happened to its mother. So the two otters, Langley and Sprout, when they were put together at the Marine Mammal Center, they've been together for quite some time.
We don't know what will happen with these two young otters that were raised together. They may stay together, they may split up, but our goal is to see them go about their business and start foraging naturally and then contributing, hopefully, to the sea otter growing population.
Yeah, so we're perfect. If you open that way, I'm going to open this way. Ready? 1, 2, 3, go.
Once they're released from the boat today, we will actually be spending the next 2 weeks following them from a boat, from a plane, and from shore to make sure that they survive.
Elephant seals are invading a popular Northern California beach. This is Point Reyes National Seashore. Nursing seals began swarming the beach in January. While the sea mammals spend most of their lives in the ocean, they come to shore to give birth and will likely leave during the spring. A spokesman for the beach explained why the seals choose this particular area.
This year, mostly because of storm activity and king tides, a lot of seals were displaced from other locations around the park. We have probably close to 2,000 animals around the park, and they found Drake's Beach, which was a parking area we had closed due to some minor flooding. They've now taken on that beach, and so we're kind of working on how do we continue to protect them while the pups are nursing off of the mothers, but still let some public activity go on down there, but not on the beach.
Elephant seals began appearing at the seashore in the 1970s after an absence of more than 150 years. Now, here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, Gavin Newsom has been governor for about a month now. In our California Dream Report, how he's proving himself to be a very different sort of leader than Governor Jerry Brown. And on Roundtable, a new law tries to provide more transparency for police shootings and misconduct, why police unions are mounting a legal fight against it. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. Have a great night.